Hello and welcome back. This is Sherri with Heart and Soulful. I'm in the studio today with a little experiment that I wanted to share. So if you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I hope if you enjoyed this video that you will give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos. And I wanted to do an experiment in preparation for a tutorial that I'm going to do on this little booklet that I showed in a couple of videos ago. This is one of the little projects I did while I took some time off from doing videos. And so I haven't done one yet, and I wanted to do one because it's just a fun little notebook that's out of all recycled materials. I love recycling. If you've been following me along, you know that I have been doing lots of different things, but I work with a lot of altered books and end up with lots of book page. So I've been challenging myself to try to use up all of my scraps and all of my the book page that has been torn out of altered books. So this whole idea kind of came about. I'm going to show you kind of my first thing that I did back when I knew nothing about altered books or junk journaling. I really didn't know what I was doing, and this was very early on. My original idea was to make myself an art journal where I could practice mixed media art. And so that's what this started out as. But I had zero experience. And I knew that because it was an art journal, it was going to sit on a shelf, you know, probably this way. And so I wanted it something nice to look at. And I had folded this book page heart at the beginning of my book. So this was like one of the very first projects that I did. When I did this one, I didn't fold over, or I didn't glue down my flaps. I just left them and it left it kind of fluffy. When I did this book, I thought I wanted to go ahead and prep the rest of my book. So when I did, I just glued pages together and then just slapped on craft paint just to get some color on there to begin, because I had no idea what I was doing, which is fine for an art journal because it's just kind of a first layer base thing, but it was really kind of pointless other than that. At this point, I think I didn't even know what gesso was. So this is kind of a very early on beginning of me not knowing what I'm doing. And then when I was doing this Bohemian journal, and I'll put a link down in the description for this one in case you've missed this whole series. When I did this series, I was allowing myself only to use recycled book page, no other paper. So I had to come up, and it was supposed to be a journal, so I had to come up with ways to make my whatever I was using, my book page, writeable. Because I ended up doing journaling cards and all that sort of thing. I even did this little, I think this is when I first tried to come up with how to make them writeable, was I created a puzzle pieces out of a photo that I had taken on a trip, but I wanted them writeable on the other side. You can see that's just book page. Sorry about the shadows again here. That's just book page. So that's when I kind of originally came up with the idea to figure out how to do my book pages writeable. So I'm going to do this video and show my experiment only because that way I can just do it as a standalone. If somebody were to search how to make recycled paper writeable, then they would find it. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you my little experiment that I did yesterday. And kind of two reasons I wanted to do it was I had a comment. The project that I'm working on that I'm going to pick back up again is this Use Your Wings journal that I had started, a few months ago, and I had kind of stopped working on it. So I have people asking me when I'm going to do another video because they've been kind of following along and now they're caught up. So my intention when I did this one was, again, it's kind of, it's a journal, but it's kind of done more like an art journal in a way, as far as each page is a spread, but there are things tucked in that you can write on. And so my center section of this one, my intention was to do the folded heart again because I really like how that looks sitting on a shelf. I've done a couple of them now. I did that first one, and then I did this one. I've done them with them in the center. This one was at the beginning. Because I think this was the second one that I had done. And then I started putting them in the center of my book. But these are the ones I still have that haven't went on to a new home. But my intention was to do the heart folded in the center and then continue on. So I kind of wanted to think about this before I do this part in case I change my mind. I had already started thinking that maybe I wanted to do something different since I put it aside for a while. I've left enough pages to fold the heart. And Cindy had made a comment to me somewhere that, you know, she was kind of wondering if it was going to make my journal too big to have the heart in there, that maybe I just use these pages, you know, do more pages. But the thing is, this second half is going to probably take up as much as this half at least, which means my book's never going to close anyway, and it's going to sit on a shelf. So I like looking at the heart. It's not really wasted pages if I make them writable. I don't have one to show you because it went to its new home already, but I think there's a video, but I don't think I made them writable in the video. I did one with a folded heart, and then what I did was, instead of just leaving them kind of useless, inside were all the folded ones. I don't think I did anything on the back, but on the inside, I went ahead and made those writable so that each one's a journal page. And I think there's like 63 pages in the folded heart. So that's, you know, 63 more writing surfaces. If you did both sides, you would have, you know, 126. So I'm tempted to kind of still leave the heart and just make it writable so that it's useful in this one. My other idea that I could do, so maybe you let me know in the comments in case I haven't done it already, is on this one, another thing that I've done is I made kind of like a little secret space in here. And then that way it doesn't take up any more space than those pages, those 63 pages, is I made kind of like a little recess in it, kind of like a little hidden thing. And so I could actually do that. I have enough pages, I could probably make, you know, this little recess on both sides, you know, and put like 2 little notebooks in here. This one I put kind of like a little scrapbook for photos in it. And then, you know, it's kind of hidden in there. So I might do that. I haven't decided yet, but I need to decide, I think, before I get too far on this one, in case, the reason being is if I'm going to paint these to be writable, I kind of want to do it before I get this back part done because it'll be easier, you know, to work on than trying to work on this thick, lumpy thing. So I'm going to have to decide. But I wanted to show you my experiment in case you've tried the same thing, and show you what works the best and what pen works the best, because I had a favorite. So I started out with just some book page. It's older, so it kind of has a little, you know, off-white color. Some of them, book pages are more yellow than others. But I started with just plain Liquitex, the professional gesso. I don't have any of the cheap version of Liquitex, which I can't remember. It might have a red label. I'm not sure. But there's another one that doesn't say professional gesso. It's just kind of your basic gesso. I've used both, and I kind of like the professional one. It's a little smoother, and it goes on a little heavier, and that means you only need 1 coat probably, whereas the cheaper bottle, you kind of need 2 coats. So, you know, if you know, pennies on the dollar, it's probably just the same price because you're doing 1 coat of this. So, and it does kind of leave a smoother surface. So this one was done with just the Liquitex gesso. And then this one, I decided I wanted to try it versus just craft paint, because in this book, I had just used cheap craft paint. And I haven't tried to write on this, but that was never my intention. I was going to use this as an art journal. So I did it with just this Craft Smart. This is the Michaels brand in just white. I tried that. And then I tried my favorite Apple Barrel antique parchment that you see me use a lot. I just like the color of this against, you almost can't see the difference against the old book page. So I kind of like the color because I'm not a huge bright white person. And then I grabbed, just because it's another color I use a lot, is this Toasted Marshmallow for like really old book page. This one isn't really old, but it ends up kind of being the color of, let me pull some older book page. So you can see that would really blend in nicely with that. So those were my colors I decided to try for my old book page. But then when it came to writing on it with pens, I tried different things. So the first thing I grabbed was my Sharpie Ultra Fine, which is my always favorite go-to marker pen. I use this to do all my thank you cards. When I send out shipments, I handwrite a thank you card. And I like how small the tip is. I like how dark the color is, and it's permanent, and it just writes really smooth. So I buy these in bulk because it's just my favorite one for writing on really cards or anything. So I tried that one on all of them. This was just on the gesso, and it writes great. And I had used that before, so I knew it did. When I tried using it on the paint, and I won't show you each color because they're about the same, but it doesn't write quite as well on the craft paint. It was okay, but this was my favorite. Then I tried a Sharpie pen because I had just purchased some of those recently, and I don't know how long they've been out, but Sharpie has now just a regular pen. It has an end that looks similar to the Sharpie marker, but it doesn't really write the same. I don't like how it feels in my hand as much for some reason. I don't know that it's much different, but it just doesn't feel the same to me. And then the color of it isn't quite as dark. If you can see that, it's not as thick and dark as the ultrafine marker. So I still like that better, the Sharpie marker, the best. Then I tried a Pilot G2 pen. I'm just kind of grabbing every pen that I had just for a gel pen to try, because I always have a bunch of these around. It worked okay, but not great. It wasn't my favorite. And all of these, the Pilot pen worked worse on all of the paint. And then I tried a Unipen because I have a bunch of different sizes of these, just these little pigment ink pens. I use these for the Zentangling and things. Again, it has a nice tip. I don't know if you can see that very well there on my hand. But again, it didn't work as well. It worked okay, I guess, on the gesso. Gesso was by far better to write on than any of the painted ones. So I'm kind of sticking with that. The other thing that I tried were the Posca paint pens, because I thought, well, if it's working okay on the gesso but not on paint, because gesso, if I understand correctly, gesso has a little bit of glue in it. And so that may make the difference of the smoothness of it versus the kind of the grittiness of matte paint, just the texture of it. So I thought, well, a paint pen might work okay. So I tried two different ones. I have, let's see. I had this one that is the pen type. So it's like a plastic nib, a pen nib. And I tried that one, and then this one has more of that bullet shape, like a marker end, but they're both kind of supposed to be the same, I think, ultra fine. They're both 0.7 millimeter size. And those did okay, but you know, it is different working with the paint pen. I found that I liked the pin type better than the bullet style. For some reason, the bullet style, I don't know if you can see, it gives you like a little skip, kind of. It has a little bit of drag when you're using it. So I think for that one, I liked that plastic pin, they call it, nib, for if you're going to do a paint pen. But it worked fine if you want to use paint instead of the gesso. That worked okay. It's just thicker because I don't think they have a thinner one than this. And then the other things I tried, I was kind of, like I said, grabbing anything I had. I had these Pitt artist pens. I didn't have one in black, so I tried it. This one's in magenta. I tried it. It was okay too, but not my favorite. But if you wanted a finer thing and in color, this did work on actually both the gesso and the paint. And then what else did I try? Artist Loft. This brand, you can buy these at Michael's. It's kind of their, lower end brand, I guess, of supplies. But you can buy them individually is why I have this one. I, a lot of times, use this color for doing my lines. If I want to make the back of a journal card a lined card, I'll use this pen. So it's, again, a permanent ultrafine point. And you can see that point if I'm in focus here. Another ultrafine point. And it was okay. It was not as good on the paint. This is on the gesso, and it came out okay. But on the paint, once you've written, especially on any kind of marker on paint, if your paint on your paper is not really dry, it kind of will ruin your marker. So you do want to, whatever you end up using, you do want to make sure that your paper is really dry before you start writing. And then the other thing I tried was I had this Recollections Calligraphy Pen, and it actually was better. This is a medium point in black, and it actually was better once it dried. That's out of focus. Where are you, camera? It actually was better once it dried than when I was using it. It worked great, I thought, okay, on the gesso. But it was really weird when I did it on the painted surfaces. You can't really see a huge difference now that it's dry, but it went on nice and thick, the ink on this one. But when I did it on all the painted surface, it was almost like the ink sat on top of the paper and didn't kind of absorb in at all. It dried fine, but it was just kind of weird. I wasn't a huge fan of that. So I ended up, after the whole thing, deciding that the gesso was the way to go. Now, one thing I want to point out, because you can see I didn't do any of them on the back side, and so I think that might be what part of my problem is. All of these papers I painted on, and then I let dry. I may have helped it out with a heat gun a little bit, but then I went and I ironed them because I always like them to then be really flat, and then it gets all the moisture out of the paper. When you do that, you want some protection. I'll usually do it between another piece of paper. I have a little June Taylor ironing. It's like a quilter's mat, where it's a cutting mat on one side and then it's fabric. I don't have it in here, or I'd show it to you, but I've shown it before if you've been following me. But it's fabric kind of where you can stick pins in it and stuff on the other side. I'll use that side on my ironing board just so I don't ruin my ironing board. And then I don't worry about ironing this kind of stuff. I'm saying that because you can see this one's really curled and these are not. And they were all flat when I started. And I put them all under some heavy books to flatten them out, and this one still came out curled. So it might be because of the glue that's in here, and I think the solution, a fix for that, would be you do both sides, because in the past I've done things both sides and then it doesn't curl. I'm going to show you the next little experiment I did, because I ended up liking the gesso the best, but it's white, and I don't maybe want it to be white. So today, what I did was, I did those yesterday. So today I decided to try to tint my gesso to see if I could get it to be a color that I liked for my vintage paper. And it worked. But again, you can see this one is curling, this one a little bit, but I have not ironed these, and I have not done them on the other side. So I'm probably going to do that just to, see what happens. But to color them, I thought, I really liked the antique parchment color. So I took my vintage photo, from Ranger, the Distress Spray Stain in vintage photo, and then I also had the Distress Oxide in vintage photo. And if you've ever worked with these, you know that they're not the same. This one has oxide in it. So their colors, even though they're the same color, supposed to be, they are a little bit different, because they're different products. So I just took my little, these little medicine cups. It's funny, sometimes I'm going to mention where I get these, because sometimes I'll see somebody doing something in a video and it's really not related to what they're doing, so they won't talk about it, and I'm like, oh, what is the top that she has on that bottle, or what is that thing she's using, or what is that mat she's using. So these are just little medicine measuring cups. You recycle them off of your stuff that you get, save those. But I use these to mix my resin for my jewelry. So you can buy these from a medical supply online or in a shop, whatever. Medical supply in like packages of 100, and they're really cheap. So, and I clean them out and reuse them, for painting things. Resin, it's a one-time deal. But anyway, that's where you can get those, if you didn't already know that. So I did 2 little pots of vintage photo and then the oxide, and all I did was just like one little squirt, and then squirt in some paint and mix it up till you can keep adding gesso until you get it the color you want, the lightness you want. I didn't want it too dark, so I kind of just played around with it, and it turned out fine. It's not bright white, and they both were okay. So it's not like I really had one favorite over the other. It's really just how much you mixed. So as I did this, and the reason I'm going over this whole thing is I had made this little booklet just to throw in my purse for notes or whatever, out of recycled stuff. And the main reason I made it is I wanted to figure out how to do a spine like this. And so I just threw some old book page in here because it was easy. I want it to be writable, so it's actually functional. And so I didn't want to waste the paint I had mixed up playing around with colors. So I just painted it on both sides of this. So I'm showing this because this is going to be my next demo, and you'll want to do your paper ahead of time. I mean, I'm painting them in here now that they're already installed, by just, sticking another piece of paper and then just, painting over it. The problem is you have to let them all dry. It would be much easier if they were not in a book and I can just hang them around or lay them around and let them dry naturally, and then I don't need to really iron them or anything. I can just put this under a heavy book and it'll be okay. But you can see these really aren't curling, and I think it's because I've done both sides. I did kind of speed these along so that I can, get rid of my paint before it dried, since it's already in a little book. And I'm kind of glad I did, because I made a little boo-boo, and I want to show you what happens. Because gesso has a little bit of glue in it, and if you're going to help it along with either an iron or your heat gun, you have to be really careful, because the heat will make the glue bubble up if you put it on one spot for too long. So you can use your heat gun, just keep it moving. Don't stay on one spot, and stop before it's totally dry, So you can see, I don't know. You can kind of see the little bubble it made right there. And it's not a big deal. It's just if you're trying to do something flat and perfect, that could happen. Same could happen if you were using your iron and you left it in one spot too long, or maybe your gesso's just thicker in that spot. So it's just, it's not the end of the world. It's just something to be aware of. And that's why it happens, and you can't avoid it. So I've just done, using up the paint that I had already mixed up. So I do like that I was able to tint that color. Now I'm going to finish, painting these, and then I'm going to do a bunch more just blank book page so that I have it ready to go for my next little project. It's also a good way if you've poured gesso out for something else and you have some left over, tint it, grab some book page and paint them, and then you'll always kind of have a stash of it for when you want to glue it to the back of a journal card or something to make it writable. So this is just one more way to use some of your recycled materials. You could do the same thing with junk mail, any kind of thing that you want to hide the text of. On these, this is just one coat, and I don't really mind. Actually, I kind of like seeing that it was book page, seeing through it. You could do 2 coats and it would hide that even more. I've done that on some things, but I don't mind. It kind of makes me smile to see that I have book page under there because I know I've given it a second life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. And then I'm going to hopefully do a video on this little booklet with kind of this little corset spine. It's kind of an open spine. So that's it for today, at least for now. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.